All right, good evening. We're in the last section of this book. Didn't know that there would be a part four for Maya's song, but this is such a great book, and we're going to knock it out, hopefully, in the next few pages. And we, ironically, wore this shirt, and we're at the section where they're about to talk about April 4th, 1968. And coincidentally, that was the same date that Maya Angelou was born, April 4th, but 40 years before. So let's read. Sometimes bad things happen. Isn't that the truth? Sometimes darkness comes. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated on Maya's birthday. Whew. Coretta lost her husband. 4 children lost their father. The world lost a leader. Maya no longer had her friend. Maya no longer had her joy. Maya no longer had her voice. For 5 days, Maya didn't leave her home. For 5 days, Maya couldn't speak. She lost her voice. Remember, the first time she lost her voice was in her childhood, around 8 or 9 years old, and she didn't speak until she was a teenager because of that terrible incident. She's been through a lot. Look how beautiful she is, just writing. Rising, Jimmy refused to let Maya keep her words inside. He took her to a friend's house for dinner. After dinner, the guests gathered around Maya and listened to her tell stories about growing up in Arkansas. The mama. Every time one story ended, they asked for another. Maya's stories were so good. An editor, Bob Loomis, asked if he could publish them. Wow. The world needs to hear your story. No one can tell it like you. Maya started writing her story down. She titled her first book, I Know Why the Cage Birds Sing. I remember this from high school. She wrote about all the joy and the sad times. She wrote about all of the cities she called home. She wrote about her family and friends who were no longer alive to tell their own stories. You know, you could do the same too. Even though this is supposed to be directed to children, but adults, we have been through a lot. And children, listen to your grandparents. Listen to their stories. Oh, if only I recorded my elders when I had a chance to capture those narratives, those personal family histories. Oh, do it while you can. She carried them with her every time her pen touched paper. She was writing her story and their stories too. So it's an honor to listen. You might say, oh, you know, in Thanksgiving, this is a great time, Thanksgiving week, to sit down with your elders, with your aunties, your grandparents, and ask them questions. I'm telling you. And if you can, just start jotting down notes. Oh, this is what happened. This is where my family is from. Good morning. A cool, crisp day, the sun, a light glow. Maya's words echoed across oceans, blasted out of radios and televisions, and hung over Washington, D.C.'s sky. You remember this? The dignity. Give birth again to the dream. Each new hour holds new chances for new beginnings. It was the inauguration of President Bill Clinton. He loved Maya's books and poems, and he asked her to write a special poem for the nation. Maya was the first woman and the first Black person to be given this honor. Remember Amanda Gorman? Nearly 30 million people listened to her poem on the pulse of morning. Maya's mama was right. Maya was a preacher, a teacher, a Black girl whose voice chased away darkness, ushered in light. This is beautiful. free bird. Maya wrote her story in the form of autobiographies, poems, and songs. She performed in movies and plays and gave lectures in many countries. No holding her head down, no hiding, no more silence. She didn't have the pitch perfect voice others had, but she had her songs, her stories, and she alone was enough. And guess what? You're enough. You might not be perfect, but you were made perfectly. So you have sufficiency. And there's a timeline. Oh, again, we know that she was born in St. Louis, 1928 and 1931. The year my dad was born, November 6th. Maya and her brother moved to Stamps, Arkansas to live with their grandmother. 1945, she gives birth to her son. 1952, Marguerite marries Anastasios Angelopoulos and officially changes her name Angelopoulos. That was her name. That was her husband's name. 1960, Maya Angelou works for the Southern SCLC with Dr. King. 1965, her good friend and civil rights activist Malcolm X was killed. 1968, we know that Dr. King was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee. 1969, she publishes her first autobiography. I know why the cage bird sings. 1971, she publishes her first book of poetry, Just Give Me a Cool Drink of Water Before I Die. Nominated for a Pulitzer Prize. 1977, she appears in Roots, and she receives the Emmy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress. 1993, she reads the poem for President Clinton's inauguration. 2001, she received the 2011. She received the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the country's highest honor presented by President Barack Obama. 2014, Maya dies on May 28th in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. In 2022, Maya becomes the first Black woman to appear in the United States Court. Can you believe this life well lived? I tell you. So she passes in May 2014. But she was she 86 years old? I don't know. 1928. Then 70, no, 80, 90, short of 90. So yeah, 86, around 86 years old. Beautiful. Author's note. When I was a young girl, I recited two of Maya Angelou's poems at a school assembly. It's so important to have these assemblies so people have practice to perform and recite. Still I rise and phenomenal woman. I felt so powerful speaking the words of a woman who has survived so much, who have persevered. The first time I heard Dr. Angelou speak, I cried through most of her lecture. I was way up in the balcony. She couldn't see me and she didn't know me, but I felt like she was speaking directly to me, like she knew a little girl named Renee was in the audience and that I needed to know that I too could rise. I have Maya Angelou's words close to my whole life. Her words guide me, heal me, inspire me. Beautiful. These poems are a tribute to the woman whose work and life deeply impacted me. And as far as an illustrator, the story of Maya Angelou is one of inspiration and celebration, and her courage, honesty, and truth serves as a testimony to encourage us all to speak truth to power in order to overcome our adversities. The book is painted in watercolor and collage and starts with young Maya and her older brother traveling by train. Notice the use of certain colors like blue to express a sadness in Maya, the brightness of color as Maya's mood changes to joy. As Maya grew to fall in love with words, language, and song, she said it best, and God put a rainbow in the clouds. For these times we live in, I too embrace the idea that the power of light can always chase away the darkness. And Renee, the author, lives in Oregon, and she splits her time between New York, Harlem, and Portland, Oregon. And Brian Collier, he is an Ezra Jack Keys Award winner, and wow, just talented people. All right, I'm inspired. I know you are too. Let's go on to make some great things and derive inspiration from our surroundings. Good night.